Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tom and welcome to my workbench. Today we're going to unbox this Atari 2600 Plus and maybe take a look at something a little odd about it. So let's take a look at what's in this box. Atari 2600 Plus, 10 games in one cartridge, wood grain, 4-switch. Kind of wish they went with the heavy 6er look, but you know, this was the more popular selling one. Looks like it contains a controller. So I've just got Atari logo, rainbow, video game system. Here on the back, has an Atari 2600 Plus video game system, CX40 Plus joystick, 10-in-1 cartridge, a USB power cable, and an HDMI cable. Alright, what are our 10 games? Adventure, sweet. Combat, excellent, my favorite. Dodge 'em, Haunted House, Maze Craze, Missile Command, should be fun. Real Sports Volleyball, Surround, Video, Pinball, ooh, and Yar's Revenge. Alright. I'm going to have some fun with this, even if I can only play these 10 games. Let's pop this open. Alright. Little protective packaging. We'll save that, even though this is going to sit out. This is smaller than I expected. We'll take a look at that in a minute. First, we have an instruction sheet. So this box has our... Alright, this has, at the top of it has our 10 games in one cartridge, which has dip switches. Okay. Let's see. Oh, yep, dip switches on the back. Set the dip switches to the position of any game as shown on the cartridge label. Insert the cartridge into video game system. Turn on and the game will play. Interesting choice to go with dip switches. We'll have to see how that works out. Alright, so that's the same. I don't get any cool graphics on the front like I would love to have. Copyright 2023, Atari Interactive, CX26500, 10-in-1 cartridge. That in here for the moment and set that aside. So, open this from the bottom. Ah, there's our controller. Okay. Hey, this feels like... Oh, that's actually a little stiffer than I thought it would be. It actually feels like a real Atari controller. It's nice and stiff. Regular 9-pin plug. Let's see if it works on other things too. What's in here? I got, oh, HDMI cable. Yeah, well, it's just cables. Now, so we've got a HDMI cable. Doesn't look too shabby, doesn't look too nice. And a USB power cable that's A to C. Okay, so it's going to be USB. I didn't even look at the back of this. Alright, USB-C power. Okay. Do notice I've got a cable, so I do not have a power brick. Alright. Let's grab a power brick and power this up.
Eventually,
Alright, I just want to see what happens if you turn it on with nothing plugged in. Get an Atari logo. That's a good start. And loading game failed. Okay. Well, obviously, we don't have a game in there. Dip switches down. Loading game. Not quite as quick as a real 2600, but you know, sure. Black and white color. Game select. Do you like the action on the switches? Sure, we'll go with 3. Okay. Sounds exactly like I expected it to. Granted, combat's a 2-player game. There's no 1-player mode. So I know at least some of these have like rubber bullets, ricochet, goes around. Those are always more fun. Definitely a downside to not having the actual combat cartridge is I can't look at the game numbers on the cartridge and say, okay, this is the game I want to play. Missing that is kind of a pain, but not impossible to overcome. 10-in-1 cartridge. What else should we try? Real Sports Volleyball. Oh, this is annoying. Okay. Up, down, down, up. Up. Down, down, up. Turn it on. HDMI signal sync. Atari logo. Loading game version 1.00. So I wonder if there's going to be firmware updates that I have to apply at some point.
5 minutes later.
Alright. This is my original 2600, the one I modded for S-Video for comparison. Look at them side by side. The 2600 Plus is significantly smaller, much more in line with like a Wii U than a 2600. I moved it over like this with racquetball in there, just all wrapped up in plastic, which probably wasn't the smartest move. But it's a great cart for testing if everything works. One of the things I very much want to address before we are done with this video is the interoperability of parts in games and whatnot between the two of them. Believe it or not, that took me 6 takes to say that without tripping over the word. One of the big things I want to see is how does this work in here? And I mean, obviously this was designed to use the old cartridges, so I assume this will work in here just fine. And this should definitely work in here just fine. I also want to see how the controller flips over back and forth, how my trooper, I want to see how this plays on there, because it plays pretty well on here. There's a few other things I want to check out. Some rumors I heard on the internet that I want to take a look at. So I put racquetball in because it was right there in my 2600 and ready to go, and I knew it worked because that's my testing cart. I did end up playing for a while and getting distracted and enjoying myself, so I kind of had to come back and do a voiceover. The short version is, yes, it worked. Any 2600 cart seems to work that I own, at least. And both my Trooper works on this and the CX40 works on my own 2600. Didn't expect any problems, just always wanted to check that out. So it's pretty clear to me that despite the smaller size, the engineers who developed this really did want to stick to the design style of the original 2600, all the way down to the 4 screws on the bottom and lifting the top off of it, and the wood grain part still falls in the front, exactly like a classic 2600, which is really nice to see. Inside we have 4 PCBs. This black one seems to have the system on a chip. It's a rock chip something or other. I didn't bother to look it up. It was pretty clearly the system on chip, and the HDMI output, and then headers to connect to the next board, which has the controller inputs and the rear switches, and then that has ribbon cables that go down from this point of view, up from, if you're actually using it, to the other 2 panels, which are the 2 front switches on either side. I did find it interesting how they wired up the power LED that lights up the Atari logo on the front LED hanging out here. It doesn't seem particularly bright when I'm playing with it, so I may have to go in there and see if I can slide that LED up closer to the front. I did tear it all the way down and rebuild it, but there really wasn't a whole lot to reveal about it, except for one little thing that I ran into. Ooh, that's interesting. That is I didn't even pay attention to it back here. That's an Atari 7800 plug. It's got the extra pins on the outside. That's for an Atari 7800. I am now very, very curious, but looking at this, yeah, it's just circuitry for passing data back and forth. Hopefully you can see this in here. So this is what a 2600 uses to connect. And there's 2 extra pins on the outside of each here. And I had heard a rumor that this could play 7800 games, but I didn't believe it. So if you look here on my original, I'll have to push the flap out of the way, hopefully. That's it. It doesn't have those extra pins. They're actually blocked off by that. So I'm very curious what those extra pins could be for, unless they're for a 7800. Luckily, I happen to have one. Doesn't work, as you can see, no RF output. I don't even know if this works at all. We can get in there and take a look at it. Trying to get some good light here. There we go. Oh yeah, there are definitely extra pins over here and over here. In fact, the whole shape looks the same. This definitely looks like it was designed to accept 7800 games. Oh, wouldn't that be neat? I mean, like I said, that looks like a 78 connector. I can't not try this. Pole position 2. Specifically for the Atari 7800 Pro system. Okay. No sparks. It says Atari. Loading game. It's loading the 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 game. This is pole position 2. This is not an Atari 2600 game. It does not like my controller. Woo, look at that, it's pretty. Okay. Okay, so I may need a 7800 controller, but I have those. Alright, got my 7800 controller here. I'm super excited to try this out now. I'll save you the trouble of watching me be frustrated with this for a while. Remember how I said that 7800 doesn't work, doesn't have RF output? That controller came with it, so I have no way to know if that works either. So I'm just assuming the controller doesn't work right. It had a lot of issues. It would work a little bit, it was intermittent. I'm not going to make you watch me suffer through all of that. But what I am excited about is it did launch a 7800 game, and that blew my mind. And I am so excited to have an even bigger collection of games to play on this now. Alright, so that lets me go. The Atari 2600. First reaction. Was it worth the money that I spent? I did pre-order this on Amazon with my own money. This wasn't sponsored. No one gifted me anything. My initial reaction was, this is a little expensive for what it is. But it does free up my RetroTink. It does not make me move that around if I want to play this anywhere other than my office. It comes with a bunch of games that I really enjoy. I'm definitely glad I spent my money on it. learning to play 7800 games blew my mind, and definitely makes it worth the price point for someone who also owns a 7800 and some 7800 games. So absolutely, with that secret feature, 100% worth it. Would I say it's worth it for someone who is like, oh, I like old video games? Unless they've told you specifically they like old Atari games, or you know they already own a 2600 or a 7800, I probably wouldn't get it as a gift. Let them get it for themselves. Unless they've asked for it, then obviously, yeah, it's totally worth it. Some drawbacks. The 10-in-1 cartridge, I love that it has the dip switches so that you can set the game and even use it in an old 2600. That is pretty cool to me. But it's a little interesting that they chose to put combat on that one. I mean, combat is like literally my favorite 2600 game because I would play it for hours with my friends and my neighbors. But it's a 2-player game and they only give you one joystick. That seems like an odd choice. And then without the cartridge, you don't have the listing of like which game modes are which games. Not that you couldn't work through it, but if you were looking specifically for, oh, I want to play on a maze map with rubber bullets, you're just going to have to keep guessing until you find the one that it is. Now, granted, hitting game select and hitting reset doesn't take that much work, but it could be really annoying rather than just looking at it and go, oh, I want to play game type 9. Done. But besides that, I think it's a great pack-in, and it really feels like the designers really nailed, not just, I want to say the aesthetic, but like the whole design of the 2600, especially the 4-switcher that they model it off of. It opens the same way, it feels the same way, inserting the cartridge feels right, like everything about it feels right, except it's a little smaller. And honestly, if you don't put them next side by side, then you're probably never even going to notice it. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. And if you're happy with what I'm doing here, please hit the subscribe button. And in a moment, another video is going to pop up that apparently YouTube thinks you're going to like. And I'd appreciate it if you watch that video too. That really helps out. Thank you.